Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And the revelation revealed yesterday that Nicola Sturgeon and Gene Freeman went out at the beginning of COVID and bought burner phones confirms in many people's minds that these two are just criminals and potentially murderers. Why else would people who already own phones, who have access to government communication, rush out so very quickly, get unregistered phones, not connected to the government communication system, where there is no record kept of what information will be passed through on various apps or messages, where no record is kept of conversations, where no minutes are kept, nothing. Well, this is the actions of criminals, and it suggests that these two completely are. And of course, they were paid for by public money, so perhaps they should hand the phones over. After all, I'm sure they wouldn't have just disposed of public property. That in itself would be a crime. It is so shady. It is so obvious to everyone now that these two are little more than common criminals. Let's have a look at this. But the more this goes on, the more it's seen that Sturgeon, I think, in many people's minds, are of the opinion that she is complicit in the deaths of these people. And those burner phones, for many people, will be the final clinching proof. Here goes. Nicola Sturgeon and Gene Freeman purchased burner phones at the start of the 2020 COVID lockdown. Why? Why were they not using their own phones? Why were they not using official government communication devices? Why were they not using official government channels? Is it because what they were saying and what they were planning and what they were doing, what they were conspiring to do, was a crime of such magnitude that there could be no trace at all of what they were doing? They could not be seen to be conspiring to murder thousands of people. That must never come out. Nobody wants to be seen conspiring to murder thousands of people. And that is why criminals go and buy burner phones, so that they can get rid of them, dispose of them, hide and destroy evidence. Conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, the destruction of evidence, the breach of information law. But I think we can add to that other charges. I think charges for conspiracy to murder, as well as perhaps murder, need to be added. I think if this went to a jury, I think the jury would undoubtedly look at what's happened, look at the balance of probabilities, and say, without doubt, the shadiness here leads them to conspiracy at the very, very least. Those phones are the dead giveaway in many people's minds, and certainly to me, it sells it. And if I was on that jury, I would most definitely find them guilty. Both the two key figures at the top of the SNP's response to the pandemic bought cheap, prepaid mobile phones and top-up cards in March 2020, despite having access to official communication devices. But official ones, of course, are recorded. They don't want any record whatsoever. The Scottish Daily Express can reveal that Nicola Sturgeon and Gene Freeman purchased cheap mobile phones and prepaid top-up cards during the early months of the COVID pandemic. And this is going to get even shadier when you see how they purchased them. The discovery buried in the records of the MSP allowances raises further questions about how the two key ministers were communicating with each other during the once-in-a-century health emergency. Neither had a government-issued mobile phone during their time in office. They refused one because they knew that government ones are monitored, so they used their own phones. But of course, their own phones would still be subjected to potential, interrogation. On Thursday, March the 19th, 2020, Miss Sturgeon purchased a Nokia mobile phone from Amazon for £18.16. This is the old little cheapy, you can hammer nails in with it Nokia. Not clever. Not a smartphone. Not one with the GPS. Not one that's got all these devices that listen. It's the cheapest, plainest phone. It's a communications device only. She cannot be monitored where she's gone. There's no monitoring of what she said. Nobody knows what the number is. It's a private number, everything shady. Devices for similar prices are for 2G only, although text, WhatsApps and emails should still go through without any large attachments. The then First Minister also purchased £18 worth of SIM top-up cards. The phone was bought 3 days after the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, said now is the time for everyone to stop non-essential contact and travel, but before the UK was formally put into lockdown. Remembering that these people had their own smartphones at the time, you have to wonder why they needed a little cheap Nokia. Well, there can be only one reason. There's only one reason. Miss Freeman, who was then the Health Secretary, bought two £29 mobile phones from a branch of Scotmid on the first full day of lockdown on March 24th. She later charged the phones along with two £10 top-up cards to her Holyrood expenses. And this is where you make the mistake. You should have paid it out of your own money. Then there'd have been no record of the purchases. But the greedy bastards charged it to the people. And therefore the people own those phones. Where are the phones? And they'd never been caught. Only for their own greed. Isn't that magnificent? Hoist with their own petard. 29 quid, Jean. £29. You could have paid £30 out of your pocket. Nobody would ever have known. But you, being a greedy bitch, have just hanged yourself. MSPs can claim back the cost of staff mobile phones, but neither Miss Sturgeon nor Miss Freeman submitted their expenses under that category. They didn't want it to go through like that, because that would then say, well, you bought these phones, who did you give them to? Why did you buy them? What's the question? What's the purpose of this? That's suggesting that either the claims were submitted incorrectly, oh look, I made an accident, or the phones were for their own use. I think we know the answer to that one, don't we, children? Around a dozen other MSPs also purchased pay-as-you-go handsets. Why? These people all have phones. Why all of a sudden everyone's having to buy burner phones? Isn't that strange? As millions of Britons were forced to switch home working amid chaotic and unprecedented scenes of chaos up and down the country. Oh, but we didn't have a phone. Bullshit, you did. Of course you did. You just didn't want a phone that could be monitored. Several other handsets were marked for staff use in Holyrood expenses system, however. Why? Do those people not own phones? The following year, 2021, Miss Freeman claimed back £180 for EE mobile phone top-ups, this time under the expenses heading incidental and ancillary employment cost provision, rather than the more obvious staff mobile phones. Again, shady. Doesn't want to put anything down as phones. Again, it is not clear from this who was using the device. Well, we all know. It had to be Jean Freeman. If it was a staff number, a staff phone, she'd have given it to staff. That would have been it. The fact she wasn't, she didn't want to highlight it was a phone, and she didn't want to highlight it was for her. That's why the shadiness. That's why the cover-up. That's why the creeping around in secrecy. And you know, nobody would have known. Nobody would have known if it wasn't for her greed. Miss Sturgeon bought a second prepaid phone. A second one? Costing £29.98 from Amazon, along with four £6 gift gaff top-up cards. She claimed the money back on expenses under the same incidental ancillary heading, not putting it down as a phone, because she doesn't want anyone to know she's a phone. She bought a phone. The woman's on £200,000 a year. She can't afford £25, and she has to expense it because, again, greedy bitch. If she had not said it, if she'd not have claimed it, nobody would know. Their greed is their downfall. On Monday, Miss Freeman told the UK COVID inquiry that she and the former First Minister did not use WhatsApp. Bullshit. But did communicate regularly by mobile phone call and text, none of which have been retained. No, because they were on the burner phones. She said, Miss Sturgeon and I were in each other's company every day, and so most of the business we conducted between us was conducted verbally or by telephone call on occasion. And those text messages, I couldn't find a way to recover those. But I do know that they would be very short and they were usually operational, inasmuch as me confirming to her that something she'd asked for had been done, although I'd done it, or something that she was concerned about had now been fixed or resolved. And the reason she can't find those messages is she's thrown the phone into the Clyde. She also said she'd use the Scottish Parliament issued phone and not a Scottish government device because I didn't want to have more than one mobile phone that I was using. Oh, the bullshit follows one hard on another, doesn't it? It's an absolute stream of it. Said this phone was handed back to the Hollywood authorities when she stepped down as an MSP in May 2021 with bugger all on it because she didn't use it. She was using the burner. All the device on the burner, which was then cast away to stop her going to prison. Now, here's the expenses. And there they go, look. There's Nicola's claim. There's Gene Freeman's claim. They're so greedy. They are so greedy that instead of just paying it out their own pocket and nobody knowing, they had to claim it because they'd have this entitlement that everything they do. I've had a shit. There's 50p for a flush. I'll put it on expenses. Oh, I need toilet roll for me. Oh, look, I bought an egg on expenses. Everything they do. They're earning. She's on 200,000 a year, but she's expensing everything because she's greedy, grasping, horrible woman. And this is your conspiracy. This is the conspiracy. She's got a phone. Why is she not using it? Why burners? That's the conspiracy. This is how they get drug dealers. This is the evidence they use. With burner phones, is actually seen in court as evidence of crime. And that is what we have here. She's put her own head in the noose, hasn't she? It's just up for us to pull the lever. Miss Sturgeon is due to give evidence to the inquiry today. Last week, the inquiry heard that she told her friend and advisor, Devi Sridhar, to send advice to her private email account rather than the government one because she doesn't want advice to be kept. She can delete it. She said, don't worry about protocol. So she admits that she's breaking protocol. Tackling the virus is more important than that. No, not going to prison is more important than that. And why are you getting a personal assistant, a personal trainer, to give you advice on medical issues? And not listen to professors and real ones, not leech, real professors. Oh no, it's because the real professors don't tell you what you want to hear, do they? They tell you what you need to know, not what you want to hear. Last year, it emerged that the police investigating claims of fraud within the SMP accounts were hunting for a number of burner phones and SIM cards. The prepaid devices are often used by people who want to stay anonymous and criminals. That's who they're used by. Criminals. If you've got nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Isn't that what they constantly tell us? So why is she hiding? Why is she so fearful? Why is she so shady? She's scared. And she must have saw this break last night, knowing she's going in today, and that little sphincter must have twitched like that. Let's hope when they do questions today, they question her on this extensively. And let's see what bullshit answers she's going to come up with regards to these phones. Because nothing she says today will be believable. Because all she can do is lie out of that gash of a mouth. She's an obnoxious shit of a woman who I personally think killed 4,500 people, at least. I'm coming up. If ever that woman gets into a dock and she's being prosecuted, they've got the burner phones. That is, for many, that will be the conspiracy. That will be the key to proving conspiracy. The cover-up of data, the shadiness, the hiding. Why a burner phone? You've got phones. Why not official communication? You've got that. Why the burner phone? It's to hide what you're doing. And they do use that in these other trials of like drug dealers and things like that. Because they know that they can prove the very fact they have all these phones is so that there is no evidence, that there is no trail. And they use that lack of trail against them. They use that fact that there is no proof because of the burner phones as proof of conspiracy. And that's how they can get these people. Might not be able to get them on the actual, but they can get them on the conspiracy for it. And that's how we're going to get these two. And all because of their own greed. Very highly paid people who have to expense everything because they're so used to expensing it. They just think nothing of putting these phones on expenses without thinking it through, that one day this would come back and bite them. Well, let's hope this is it. Let's hope it is that cheapness, that meanness, that entitlement to have every aspect of their lives paid for by the public, which means that the remainder of their lives will be paid for by the public, room and board. I can't wait for today. Let's hope that all the questions are going to be particularly sharp and hard for her. It'll be worth watching. So I may be back later with more Nicola Story revelations. I know there's going to be Nicola Sturgeon stories all day. But yeah, it's just one of those days. But this is just cracking news. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button. Ring that bell. Leave a like, leave a comment. Please share the video. And keep watching. Do hit the subscribe, definitely, because there's going to be lots today. But do keep watching because we don't know what else is going to come out. But we shall see. Anyway, till next time, stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.